Welcome to She Sells Radio. I have a phenomenal guest for you today and someone who I'm super excited to get to know better too through this interview for sure. And so if you follow me on social, you will see that I shared recently that I was very honored and also very humbled to be recognized by Salesforce as a top influencer for 2022, and to also share that recognition with just some of the most incredible, brightest minds in sales today. And Nikki Ivey is a fellow Salesforce Top Influencer who I connected with through the program. And when I checked out the work she's doing and scrolled her LinkedIn, which is it's fun, by the way, it's like a fun LinkedIn, which is so refreshing. And just looked at the work she was doing. I was like, I've got to have this woman on the podcast. She's amazing. So I'm going to share a little bit from her bio. And then we're going to get into what I know is going to be a really powerful conversation that will probably span sales, inclusion, and then certainly some really, I think, just thought-provoking other conversations as well. So Nikki is an award-winning B2B revenue growth leader and sales culture subject matter expert. This one-woman demand gen engine was recently recognized as a 2020 LinkedIn Top Sales Voice and Sales Success Summit Top 100 LinkedIn Sales Star. Nikki is coaching and training sales development reps through SDR Defenders, a company she co-founded. She's also the CRO of Inclusive and the head of growth development for Cultured Perspective. So Nikki, I don't know how you do it all, but I am so blown away by you already. Welcome to She Sells Radio. We're so glad to have you.
Thank you so much. I'm so happy to be here. I know that, most of the folks that listen are women, and, many of the folks that come on are women as well. And that's, really important to me. I tell people, if you, want to know a few things about me concisely, I love words, wigs, and women in charge. And
I love it.
I think we're going to get to all of those today. So
I love it. Oh my gosh, I love that so much. And we were, if you're listening to the audio of this, go check out the YouTube video, because I told Nikki when we got on before we recorded, I was just like, I love your style. And it actually turned into, I think, a short but interesting conversation we'll probably get into at some point today about just coming into your own and like really owning who you are, which I would love to talk with you about. And I'd actually love to start off with, so on your LinkedIn, you share something really powerful, which is 99% of the time in your 10-year sales journey, you were the only Black woman on the team. And so I want to hear from you. I'd first love to know, like, what got you into sales in the first place? And then what was that like for you? And we'll talk about how that's transitioned into the work that you're doing today.
So the one word answer to what got me in sales, that's the words part, right? I remember being when I was in kindergarten, my teacher, Mrs. Simpson, she commanded the respect and attention and support of people, far senior than her in title. And she did that because she was an exemplary communicator. And that it impressed me right in that moment. You know what I'm saying? I want to be that. She was a Black woman. I didn't have very many Black women teachers either at the time or in my life. And I just, I was proud of her. I wanted to be like that. And so I became a very obnoxious child, walking around reading the dictionary, correcting people on their language. It took me a long time to grow out of correcting people, probably like into my early 20s. And I was like, oh, people hate that. Oh, but so that love of words, right, became just this really high interest in communication. So I did college radio, I did theater in high school, whatever could give me access, not to just to the words themselves, but to the capacity of those words to move people, And then as I got further in my education, I studied broadcast journalism. There's a quote in journalism that it goes, don't worry about, this is loosely quoted, right? Don't worry about talking to the movers and the shakers. Talk instead to the moved and the shaken. I carry that with me into a sales career, because that's really what we're doing, right? Sure, we care about the title of the person we want to reach out to, but what we really want to know is what moves and shakes them.
Mm.
But so how did I get into sales? What does all this have to do with me entering the profession? I not only became interested in, how I communicate and the impact it had on others, but the other way around as well, right? And then studying people's reactions to each other. So it's around, what year would this have been? I'm about to date myself, but anyway, I'm 40.
No, I do it all the time.
So
you're rocking. And 40 is young. Like, let's just call it, it's young. Thank you. So
it feels young. My spirit is youthful. So
right? I feel like I'm
what it is.
permanently 20, at least in my mind. And I just kind of, I mean, I don't know. I'll probably feel that way until I'm gone from the planet. But anyway, keep going.
So yeah, I was in my very early 20s, maybe 21 or 2. And a friend of mine was going to buy a car, and she wanted me to come with her. Right. I had built a reputation among my friends as someone who was good at expressing thoughts, right? Expressing ideas, like in a way that moved people. And again, this made me able to recognize inauthenticity, a lack of authenticity in communication from other people. So this is why she wanted me with her to go shop for cars. We go to the dealership. She gets this salesman, and he is everything you've ever seen in a movie about a salesperson, right?
Oh gosh.
All right. All the aspects of culture that they glorify in these films. I mean, no shade, the films are fun. But, he was doing this thing, and I actually wanted to help him. He seemed like a nice guy. So in my attempts to break him out of this veneer, right, that was keeping him from really being able to move my friend, right? It ended up feeling like I was, to him, I'm sure, like I was heckling him.
Yeah.
And like imagine you've got a champion, right? Or at least somebody that could be, and then like someone comes into that sales conversation and like shuts it down.
Yeah.
I'm sure he kind of felt like that. But anyway, I was just using words. I was just, doing my best, again, to engage him, to pull out of him that which is real. And it didn't happen. My friend didn't buy a car, but as we're walking out of the dealership, that guy's boss like chases me out the door, and he's like, "You got something, kid? You ever consider a career in car sales?"
Oh, I love that. Wow.
It was crazy. So this is I'm in Hinesville, Georgia at the time. Hinesville, if you're from there. And that's where I went to high school. And so I wasn't doing anything at the time. This was before I ended up going back to school. And I'd learned a lot. But again, the movies kind of tell you a lot about, the bad parts of car sales culture. And I have to tell you, all that stuff is true. It's all true.
Yeah. Ugh.
I won't sugarcoat it. And it's one of the reasons why I didn't stay there. But when I was there, the things that I learned and the things that I practiced did become, part of the foundation for the things that I was applying once I got to B2B tech sales. Right.
Yeah.
Like my soul rejected a lot of that poor culture. So case in point, I had a boss there that would be like, when you see somebody walk onto this car lot, they called them ups, right? Walk ups. Okay, when you see that up, you got to imagine that's the new purse you want. You got to imagine that's this. You have to see, he was telling me to see people as objects.
Yeah.
I don't even know how to do that. And And if that's what it takes to be successful, I'm probably going to fail. And I couldn't afford to fail at that time. It was, besides the things I just told you, it was a pretty difficult time in my life. So I couldn't afford to fail. And I had to figure out, though, how to do this in a way that jives with who I am. And a wonderful thing happened, right? A young woman, for context, Hinesville is adjacent to an Army base, Fort Stewart. Okay. And this is at a time when the 3rd Infantry Division from that base, almost everyone was deployed in Iraq. So you had a population of, young Army spouses who were kind of on their own, right? Who were kind of just trying to figure it out. And these are people who come from other small towns who were also young. So anyway, she walked to the car lot.
Wow.
It's July in Georgia. She had a baby in a stroller.
Oh, wow.
And she had $800. And they're like, they call them, it's really ugly, but there is a word for people who don't appear that they'll be able to afford a vehicle. In car sales, they call them, I don't know if I want to say it, it's hurtful.
Yeah.
But anyway, so they had written her off and further demonstrated to me that nothing about this culture had anything to do with actually helping people. But I let this be my opportunity, right? What can I do to make sure that this woman and this baby are not walking back home? She came to us for help. And, you know, I had to fight, but we had cash cars in the back. Don't play me. I was like, we have this cash car in the back. You all are asking for $2,000. I saw the sheet. I know what we paid for it. I'm gonna sell this woman this car. And I did. And she cried. And it was just this beautiful thing.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it was an Oldsmobile 88. And
Mm.
it was pretty beat up, but it ran. I made sure, like, I washed the car for her, sprayed the tires with. Anyway, so this is when I discovered you don't have to be, you know, the things you see on TV that make people hate salespeople. And it wasn't even the fact that it made people hate salespeople that put me off. It just didn't feel good.
Right.
It's not kind to me. What will happen if I wake up a couple of years from now and everything that I have that's tangible, or everything that I have to show for this work that I'm doing is superficial, is built at the expense of other people, especially vulnerable people. So anyway, that stuck with me, and it's certainly, given what I'm doing now with communities and stuff, is certainly a through line in my career. The B2B tech sales piece also involves a car lot. I'll tell the short version.
This is great. Yeah.
I was in Austin, Texas now, 2014 or so. I was selling Kias. And a gentleman came in to buy a car. We go on a test drive. We have a fun time because all of my test drives were fun. And
I'm sure.
Well, no, I would ask this question. I'd be like, all right, there's two kinds of people, right? There's the ones who have to turn on the AC as soon as they get in the car, and there are the ones that have to get the music on as soon as they get in the car. Which one are you?
Oh, this
right?
is good.
So I would ask them that, which one are you? And then we would have, just like you and I are doing, we would have this conversation, and then we're not talking about the car. The outside, like a lot of the time they're like, I wanted this one, but I wanted it in that color. And then I'm like, well, we're inside this car right now. Do it really matter what color it is?
No, I love it.
You enjoyed yourself here. And so anyway, we get through with the test drive. This guy's like, you were here when I first came to look at the cars. That was a Saturday. You were here 12 hours. I'm back. You're here all day again. Like, with the skill set you have, did you know that you could be in an air-conditioned building with snacks and talk on the phone? And I was like, I had no idea. I really didn't. Like, I understood, like, technology exists and there are really smart computery sciencey people that make it work. But it had not occurred to me that someone had to sell that. So he was like, yeah, you got to meet my boss. I did meet his boss. I got the job, and the rest is, I guess, sales history.
Oh my gosh. I love it. This is so fun for me, just because I get to hear, the origin story. And so from there for you, tell us about, tell us about that experience. And I want to talk about, like I said, like on your LinkedIn, it's like 99% of the time you were the only Black woman on the team. So what was that like for you?
So luckily, that very first job, part of that 1%. That very first job, I worked for a man named Scott Leese. He was SVP of sales at a company called Outbound Engine at the time.
Yeah.
And that team was extremely diverse. And it wasn't just diverse in any, like, one demographic.
Yeah.
It was the most women I'd ever worked with. and for in large part since, right? It was most women, it was the most people of color, it was, the most people, who identified as queer, trans, non-binary. It was all of these things, different
Wow.
ages, different walks of life. And I thought that that's what it's like everywhere.
Ah, yeah. Mm.
And so first, just learning that that was not the case was a literal culture shock, right? And then experiencing everything that comes with that lack of diversity, um, it impacts outcomes
Mm.
in ways that I don't know that many people are capable or willing, to acknowledge.
Tell us more about that. I want to know more about that.
So there's sales is a meritocracy is what people say, right?
Mm.
I wholeheartedly disagree, right? It's not an
Mhm.
entire meritocracy. It can't be, because America's not a meritocracy. The
Mm.
world is not entirely a meritocracy. There are all kinds of factors separate from how hard you work, separate from, even how bad you want it, how much integrity you have, what a good place you're coming from. There are flat out factors that put many people at a disadvantage.
Mhm.
And when I'm feeling that at work and experiencing things that are happening out in the world, that also feel like attacks on my identity or other people who look like me, it is incredibly difficult. So if the average salesperson, right, starts here, this is the baseline. I'm doing like a hand thing, right? Just a
Yeah.
straight line, like one
Yeah.
level, right? If they start here, this is their ground level, right? And then they don't have these other pieces that they're dealing with, it sets me up for a situation where just to get to the baseline,
Mm.
I've got to claw through. I've got to claw through things people think of me because I was a teen mom. I've got to
Mm.
claw through the narrative that often precedes Black women in particular. I've got to claw through the things that women in general are up against. And listen, these are not, I hate that I have to say this, these are not excuses
Mm.
for underperforming, but I think we have to acknowledge the impact of those things. The overall impact of culture on people's success, on people's outcomes, right? And then you add to that I had a sales career is not always the most conducive to good mental health.
Ugh. Yeah. Tell me about it.
And
Yeah.
one of the things, I don't know if I'll call it a regret, but one of the things that's just been hitting me lately, now that I am mentally emotionally healthier than I was in the beginning of my career, is that there are so many people who I worked with and worked for who don't know me at all as a seller now.
Mm.
They knew again, like still finding my way, still very hampered by all the things that I talked about just now. And again, all of the way that impacted my performance. And so there are a lot of things that I was like, I wish I had that opportunity to do that role again with that
Yeah.
leader, with not just what I know now, but with who I am now.
Mm.
And I guess that's life, but
Yeah.
it gets tricky in a sales life because it's a career, right? And your performance in particular and your experiences, they follow you. So it
Mm.
becomes this kind of tricky place where it's like, yes, I had a difficult time in that role.
Yeah.
And I know what impacted that. But at the end of the day, there are some folks who, if they were to, ask these questions or dig into why this role or that wasn't successful, they might come away believing, for whatever reason, that I'm still that salesperson. I don't think we talk
Mm.
about this kind of thing enough in a sales career, right? If you've had a sales career for even 5 years
Yeah.
and you started that sales career when you were like 21, we're all more responsible by age 25 than we
Oh,
are
yeah.
21.
Yeah.
And yet, because the narrative or whatever impression you made, especially if that leader is highly influential, people will believe what that person says. And again, it can follow you. So there are things that I really wish I could do over, but also glad, that I never did. Glad that I didn't look back. Glad that I didn't cry too long about, times when I knew I could have done better were it not for, these things I couldn't figure out about I've since been, I suffer from bipolar disorder. And you see, I just had a difficult time saying it out loud.
I appreciate you saying that. Thank you. I appreciate you sharing that.
And what many people will know about bipolar disorder is if you don't know that that's what's going on and it's untreated, you and the people around you will just think, this person is inconsistent. This person is, up and down and, this and that. And I can't sort of get a read. Like when she's great, but when she's not, and again, so in a sales career, because we measure things in such a clinical way, then it's, that inconsistency, again, people don't often recognize it as that. So this is really what I mean when I say I wish I could have done those things over if I were healthier. But yeah, it's once I got to a place where I won't call myself brave, but where I was ready to attend to my mental health and where I was ready to confront some of the less savory parts of sales culture that I had participated in, too many happy hours, things like that.
Which we all did, right?
Right.
Yeah.
And that's when things started to turn around for me. It wasn't, of course, overnight, but that's when at least I knew, like, I didn't go attend to my mental health because I didn't want to be labeled that there's something wrong with me.
Sure.
And then once I did, the way that I was able to, get back on track and get healthy was I was like, so what? You know what I mean? Like, yeah, some folks will receive this who are hearing this, and many will be surprised to hear me talk about my condition. But yes, so what? Maybe there is something. Maybe having bipolar disorder means there's something wrong with you. But here's the thing: the perspective I had to put this in for myself was, okay, something's wrong with you, but look what you've accomplished despite it.
Oh, yeah.
So is there really anything wrong with you then? Right? Might it just be a matter of, getting treatment and finding out ways to cope that are healthy? And that's what it has been. It's an everyday thing that I and many people in my situation have to be really intentional about.
Sure.
But when I am successful, it's because I'm intentional about these things.
Oh my gosh. There's so much good in what you just shared. And I want to say thank you too for sharing that, because people will look at, they'll look at the awards, they'll look at all of that, and they'll to share some of the backstory. And it's like, it wasn't, from what I'm hearing you say, it's like, there were times when you weren't necessarily a top sales producer. And there were times when you were struggling with mental health. And it's still something that you deal with. And so it's like, knowing that and giving context, I think it's just so helpful for people to know the real deal. That's why, like, for years and years, I didn't share about the eating disorder I had when I was first in corporate sales, and like all the panic attacks and the anxiety, because I was shameful about them. But then when I started talking about it, it was like, we can actually relate, right? Like people can actually relate on a more human to human level. So so thank you again for sharing that. I think it would be so great to hear about kind of, and in the time we have, we probably can't go, through all of it, but
I'll try to give you like a couple things.
This is so good. No, this is so good. The journey of coming into your own, and I would love to tie it, even like tie it back into what we were talking about in the pre-chat, where I was like, I love your style, like how you present yourself, how you show up. And you said, like, it's been a journey, right? Like you weren't always how you show up today. So tell us about, what was that journey like, and how did you start to like really confidently express and show up like as your most authentic self?
Yep, I was not always Hustle Barbie. If you're listening, it's a t-shirt I'm wearing that says Hustle Barbie.
I love that. I hadn't even read it. That's awesome.
You know what? A lot of what you read at the top for my bio, right? That whole feeling isolated. And then it got to a point where I just got sick of it. I
Mm.
had this experience where, you know, an employer that I was working for said, we need, you know, more people of color. We need more women, you know, tell your friends to come, right? To come and apply. And there were some folks that I'd worked with in car sales who would be excellent at this job. I mean, this was just an MDR role at this time.
Mhm.
And I don't mean to say just, but I mean, it was certainly something within the skill set of someone whose job it has been for the past few years
Mm.
to get people to come into a dealership and buy something for thousands of dollars. So I was like, yes, they can do and learn this job. So I invited two people. One of them was a Black male who was, you know, had been my manager and he worked his way up from being the person who cleans the cars at this
Oh,
dealership
wow.
to being the GM,
Mm.
and
That's
couldn't get a
great.
job as an MDR. I just didn't buy it. He didn't make it
Wow.
past the phone screen. I just didn't buy it.
Mm.
And then a woman that I worked with, she's still my best friend. I'm flying to her birthday when she turns
Oh,
30
I
later
love
this
it.
month. And we're
I love it.
dressing up like mean girls, just the outfits, not the attitudes. But anyway, so she comes in, she kills the interview. My peers, the other rest of the MDR team had interviewed her and they all recommended, yes,
Yeah.
we want her, we want her, we want her. They don't hire her. And the
Mm.
person they hire ends up being the same as
Wow.
the people that they had. Then when I started to realize that I was hired, presumably, seemingly as an exception,
Hmm.
that was really painful,
Yeah.
actually. I don't feel like I am the exception as a Black woman of excellence. I don't
Mm.
at all. I am the rule.
Yeah.
The rule is that women are capable. The rule is that Black people are capable, right? And of course, these are things that folks would say, of course, to. But the situation I just described to you, there was
Yeah.
no of course in that.
Mm.
So I got pissed off, is the quick way of
Wow.
saying that.
Yeah.
And, just sort of carried that with me. I wasn't able to act on it at that time. I still had to, sort of manage people's expectations and my own of myself. But it came to a point in 2020, actually. This is how long it took me. Before this, what I'm going to tell you, I'd only made one video on LinkedIn with my natural hair.
Okay. Yeah.
And because I just didn't want, like, I had suffered so many like ridiculous, hurtful questions about my hair before in these environments that I just was protecting myself. But in 2020, when we were starting SDR Defenders. I'm trying to invite new people into, the sales profession who were as yet underrepresented. And, my name had just been Nikki Ivey on my LinkedIn profile since I started it.
Yeah.
And I remember I was at this job and they passed out like paper. I forget what the mail was itself, but it had my name on it.
Yeah.
And one of my coworkers saw it and was like, "Who is Shaniqua?" They didn't even pronounce it right.
Yeah.
And then it became this whole thing where they all talking about some character on TV that's named Bon Qui, and
Oh,
then it just
gosh.
became, you feel me? So
Yeah.
these are the things that I had been protecting, but I felt at this point, at this boiling point that the world was at in 2020. And with these people, all these new eyes and experiences coming into the profession, I was like, do I want to teach them to shrink themselves?
Oh, wow.
Do I want to demonstrate for them that I don't want them to associate any of my success with me trying to be something I'm not, with me trying to, fit in or behaving in any way that could be construed as not being proud of my name, right? What happened I'm sorry, I'm probably almost out of time, but I have to say
No,
this.
you're good. Keep going. This is great. Yeah.
So that is when I decided to put Shaniqua, Nikki in parentheses Ivy. I had to keep the Nikki because people know me as Nikki Ivey. But that's when, right? In the 1980s in America, it was a time when Black people as a culture were reaching for our roots. We didn't have access to our African cultures. We didn't have access to our African names. And so some of us made them up. My
Mm.
parents, and it maybe is connected to some actual name and some
Yeah.
actual African culture, but it was just, the name Shaniqua is distinctly Black American.
Mm.
It's distinctly,
Yeah.
you hear it and you know. And I was afraid of that
Mm. Yeah.
because I was so hyper aware of what people think of Shaniquas, because I've been in so many environments where people had articulated those things.
Yeah.
And like, first of all, like, the Shaniquas that do fit the archetype that these people are being shady towards have every right to express themselves and be the Shaniquas that they are, as I do. We don't all
Yeah.
have to Shaniqua the same.
Mm.
But that's really like, that is what, how I came into my own.
Wow.
And then I was like, it doesn't even have to mean I'm wearing my natural hair every single day to make a point on LinkedIn. It can mean that I do whatever I want, that I just do whatever I want. There is this book, and
Oh
there is
my
this,
gosh, that book is so powerful.
it's
Un-
Untamed for those of you
yeah.
just listening.
Yeah.
And there's the line in it,
Yes. That
uh
makes me cry. Yeah.
the
Tell this.
one, she says, uh all the things that make a woman human are a good girl's dirty secret. I
Mm.
don't want no dirty secrets. I'm cool. I want to be a human. You know what I mean?
Oh,
If I have
the
to
chills.
choose, you and I know
Yeah.
that being a woman and being good, being human as a woman and being good are not mutually exclusive, right?
Mm.
And that the definition of good, right, it could also use some deeper examination. But
Right.
that's what it was. I was like, I don't want no dirty secrets. I don't want to be treating these things that are so natural to who I am, so important and critical to who I am, like there's something I should be embarrassed about. I am Shaniqua Chantel. I was born in the Hilltop Housing Projects of
Mm.
Dayton, Ohio in 1981, and my daddy named me.
Mm.
He named me after what he said was, Shaniqua was the prettiest girl in the projects besides your mom.
Oh.
And he was like, and she wouldn't let me name you after her. My mom's name is Octavia. But
uh,
so
wow.
again, and
Mm.
it means African princess. Who knows, right?
Yeah.
But anyway, yeah. So I, when I started letting myself be Shaniqua, whether people were calling me Nikki or not,
Yeah.
stuff started to turn around, and that's when I was able to be more, yes, more effective in my career, but more importantly, like a more effective and authentic mentor to the people that are coming into this profession, right? I don't want people looking up to me if what they're looking up to isn't actually me.
Gosh, so good. It's so good. Thank you for that. Oh man. For someone, I want to ask, I feel like we could have this conversation for hours. It's just, I'm so inspired. I want to ask one final question. We didn't really get into sales tips today, which I am like, this is what I care about. But what I was going to say with that is I want you to tell everyone where they can follow you, because you give phenomenal sales tips and strategy on LinkedIn and on your other social too. So I want to give you a moment to like tell everyone where they can connect with you. But this is the type of things, this is what I like to talk about. This is way more important. And this is so powerful. So if someone is listening and they feel like they can't be their authentic selves in sales and be successful, clearly following you and just seeing the example you're setting, I think is really empowering. But is there anything else you would say to them, or anything else, any piece of it, like final piece of advice you would give to them if they are maybe earlier in that journey than you?
Yeah. Do not be afraid to speak up. You're not crazy.
Hmm.
You're not imagining it, right? The dis-ease that you feel, the exclusion that you feel is likely actually happening. And when that happens, talk to your leader about it. Approach it with curiosity, right? Hey, I keep getting people say things to me like this. Why do you think that's happening? What do you think we could address about the culture here that might make it easier for me to exist here and feel like I belong?
Mm.
Yes, I'm able to say that because I've had to practice it over and over again.
Yeah.
But don't be afraid to say that. And secondly, like, if specifically, right, if you belong to a historically excluded group, right? I mean women, I mean all the things, right?
Yeah.
Then join a community that is concerned with lifting up that group.
Mm.
There are so many of them now, more than ever, more than when I started in the profession, right? I mean, you have what you're doing, you have what Cynthia Barnes, another one of our
Yeah.
sales influencers, and we have what her outfit. You have Sisters in Sales. You've got Gabrielle and Alexine with Women in Sales Club, and then all these others. Like I said, or maybe I did mention it. Sales for the Culture.
No.
I'm one of the founding members. Originally founding it was myself, Morgan J. Ingram, Kevin Dorsey, and Ernest Owusu of Six Sense. These are all some of my favoritist people. And they decided, again, we were all pretty much kind of the onlys or ones of a few at our respective organizations. And so this community, Sales for the Culture, over 1,000, Black and brown sellers at various points in our careers, functions as an external ERG in a lot of ways. When things happen out in the world that impact us as Black people, that maybe in our organizations, there isn't the opportunity to discuss in a way that is authentic and free. We have that in this organization. So join us if that's you. Or just, straight up reach out to me. I cannot promise that I will respond immediately, but when I get these types of stories, when I get these types of requests, and I get them a lot, I make a point to answer those as soon as I can.
Yeah.
So do that on LinkedIn. It's probably going to be the longest wait. You could comment on something, and I'll probably see that sooner than I see an inbox message. But Twitter and Instagram, those inboxes are dry. So
not for long.
So I will definitely see it if you message
Yeah.
me there. And at no Nikki Ivey on both of those platforms. So not no as in rejection, but no as in get to know Nikki Ivey. So KNOWNIKKIIVEY on Twitter and Instagram.
Amazing. Amazing. And then they can find you on LinkedIn, obviously, as well. Yep. Shaniqua, Nikki Ivey, right? Oh my gosh. This has been so inspiring. You've given all of us just so much to think about. And I want to say thank you so much for sharing your journey, your story, and for the example that you're setting for anyone who is, including myself, who is looking to continually lean into all of who we are and own that more powerfully. It's such a beautiful example. So thank you from the bottom of my heart.
Thank you. This has been, a healing for me. Yeah. We're not in the office anymore. I don't have access to other, dynamic women very often. It's just me and my house and my husband and my kids, and they're great. Yeah. But meeting you is, and getting to speak with you today has really been, refreshing. Like I said, kind of healing. I'm feeling an energy. I think we're going to be friends.
Yes, it is. I hope so. I would love that so much. I would love that so much. Thank you again so much, Nikki, for your time. And for everyone listening, please connect on social, follow her content. It's phenomenal. And just so grateful to have you. So to my listener, thank you for tuning in. I know that you found this episode super powerful. Please, I'm always so grateful when you share, tag both Nikki and myself when you share, and we'd love to connect with you as well. Have a fantastic week, and I'll see you next week on our next episode of She Sells Radio. Bye for now.